Hi, welcome to Astro Journey UK. In tonight's video, I'm going to be basically getting first light, if that's even a thing, with my ZWO AM5 harmonic mount. So if you want to see how I get on with this, any problems and issues or good things, then keep watching. So when running through polar alignment, you have to disengage these locks. So you've got one there for the altitude adjustment, and then you've got one here for azimuth, and then you've got another two on the other side. You have to slacken these off whilst you're doing the actual alignment itself, so that you can move the mount up and round and get it correctly polar aligned. And then when you're actually getting to the point of sort of as close to alignment as you can possibly get, then you have to lock these back into place. So not quite the same as with other mounts where you do only have like two bolts that are pushing against each other. This one's still, the azimuth is still working the same way, but the altitude is just literally a very lightweight, really easy to use and move altitude bolt. So once you've got that in place, you want to lock this so it doesn't move anymore, to ensure that you get good guiding, really. However, when you do lock these back into place, sometimes it kind of moves it a little bit. So that I think the trick there that I got from watching one of Nico's videos as well was that if you sort of get close to polar alignment, then tighten these up a little bit more so that you're almost completely tight but not fully. Make the finer adjustments, and then once you've done that, then lock them off. You kind of have less of an issue really with that, but I found the process in terms of getting really good polar alignment fairly quick. It's certainly no slower than other types of mounts that I've got. So one thing I just wanted to talk about quickly about the portability of this this mount is when I was setting up down a bit so I don't shine the light in the telescope, setting up the telescope. However, because it's so low down, the scope was here, I'm shooting up there, and the bush was obscuring the view. So I just ended up moving the mount from here over to there by just literally picking it up, and the floor is pretty level, so I didn't even need to re-level the mount, although that's not really a mount feature, and carried on with polar alignment. So nice, quick and simple. You can see down here as well, I've got the jackery in the little tripod bag, just because it's a good way of doing it, and also just testing out having this as a completely remote rig. So although I've got an extension lead there at the moment, this is just for the Ethernet over power line adapter, because I'm currently using the ASI Air Pro and the Wi-Fi is terrible, so I'm just using that the Ethernet instead. So one thing to mention about this mount, the eagle-eyed of you in the previous video noticed that there's no polar scope for this mount at all. So what do you do for polar alignment? You kind of look at the front, there's no scope coming through. At the end of the day, you've got you've got one option. The only option is actually to use the main imaging scope to do the actual polar alignment itself. So if you're using the ASI Air devices, that's already got built-in software to be able to do polar alignment using the main imaging scope, You start off pointing up at Polaris, and then it rotates the scope 60 degrees round on the right ascension, and once it's done that, it does another plate solve, works out where the stars are and where they should be, and then you just go through the usual routine of modifying or moving the azimuth and the altitude bolts, and you get polar alignment. This is also supported, I think, likes of SharpCap and possibly Nina. I'm not sure about APT, but yeah, there are other options there if you're not using the ASI Air device. But you can see this rig is pretty much just ZWO kit all over the place, apart from the William Optics telescope. But yeah, hopefully that helps understand how you would do polar alignment for this scope. One point just to talk about very briefly is a thing that I'm going to have to get used to, and that's how low down to the ground the actual mount is. Isn't a bad thing. I mean, it keeps it out of any wind, keeps it nice low center of gravity. You can use the bag as well for extra weights. I'm using the Jackery here to weigh the tripod down a bit more, because these carbon fiber legs, so everything's all pretty light, so anything you can do to weigh it down helps. But yeah, it's really low down, so whereas if you're doing sort of polar alignment, you're bending through the polar scope to be able to do the alignment, it's a bit back-breaking. This was partly a little bit back-breaking, just to have to bend down in order to be able to use the azimuth and altitude adjustment bolts, but to be fair, it wasn't really that bad, and got quite accurate polar alignment quite quickly on. So in my unboxing video, I talked about this this dovetail mount here, where you can it's called like a finder shoe mount, where you can attach the ASI Air device to the actual mount itself. However, I've decided against that, mainly so I can avoid the number of cables that's going from the moving part of the mount to the not moving part. So essentially, for my setup here with the William Optics Red Cat, the only cables that I've got going up to the scope itself is this power cable, and then also the cable that's coming to control the mount that goes into the ASI Air up here. So I've got two cables. I can actually probably tweak them in the future in terms of getting shorter cables that are less likely to snag and things like that. But this one here that came with the, I'm trying to remember, it might have been the camera, it might have been the ASI Air. Yeah, basically that cable was a good size. The one that actually came with the mount for actually connecting the mount, you can see it's actually quite long, so I've just tied this off here just so that it's less likely to snag on things like the altitude adjustment bolt and things like that. So I think that makes the most sense, really. And yeah, just making sure that you don't have anything that's likely to snag. And I think if you've got the controller down here, you're going to have a cable coming up to the camera up here. You're going to have a power cable coming up. You're going to have another cable coming up to the guide scope. It just doesn't seem to make sense, in my opinion. So one of the things that's a little bit unusual with a harmonic drive mount is the fact that you can't disengage any of the mechanism, so it's actually impossible to balance the scope and the mount. I guess inherently it's always going to be unbalanced, because the scope you've got obviously here, and there's no counterweight, so therefore it's always out of balance. But also the same with the declination part of the mount. You can't balance the scope at all. So from one perspective, it makes it really, really quick to just get up and running. You just literally put the scope on. It doesn't really matter where you put it, and yeah, away you go. So no faffing around with counterweights and all of that sort of thing. You just put it on and start getting focused and polar aligned. So I just wanted to finish this video by summarising my experiences with the AM5 mount. Basically, it's an absolute pleasure to use. I've probably banged on about the fact it's really super lightweight and really easy to use, and it's exactly that. You obviously pay a price for that, but yeah, it's a really good and capable mount. Guiding was fantastic, setup was easy, yeah, just brilliant. So I'm going to leave this video at that. I've basically got an image that I was taking whilst doing this video of the Elephant Trunk Nebula. Yeah, just take a look at that at the end, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and clear skies.